The cargo hold smelled like fear and sweat, not human sweat, but the strange fluids that leaked from alien bodies when they were scared or tired or hurt. Danny Carter sat in the corner of his cage with his legs crossed and his eyes half closed. He looked like any 10-year-old boy might look after weeks of bad treatment and little food. His brown hair was dirty and hung over his forehead. His clothes were torn in several places. Small scars covered his arms and face, but Danny was calm. Too calm for a child who had been taken from everything he knew. The other prisoners in the hold made noise. Some cried, some screamed. Some just sat quietly and waited for whatever came next. There were dozens of different species in the cages around him. Tall ones with 6 arms, small furry ones with big eyes, creatures that looked like insects and others that seemed to be made of living rock. All of them were prisoners. All of them were about to be sold. The ship belonged to Captain Vexthor. He was a Velcrin, which meant he looked like a giant lizard that walked on 2 legs. His scales were dark green and his eyes were yellow like old amber. He had sharp teeth and claws, but what made him dangerous was his brain. Vexthor knew how to find weak creatures and how to sell them to those who wanted slaves. He walked through the cargo hold now, checking each cage. His long tail dragged behind him on the metal floor. When he reached Danny's cage, he stopped and tilted his head. "This one," Vexthor said to his assistant, a smaller alien with too many eyes. "The human child. He has been quiet the whole trip." "Very quiet, Captain," the assistant agreed. "No trouble at all. Almost like he is not really here." "Good. Quiet ones work better in the mines. They do not fight. They do not cause problems." Vexthor tapped the cage with one claw. "We will get a fair price for this one." Danny opened his eyes fully and looked at the captain. For just a moment something moved behind those young eyes, something old and cold and dangerous. But it passed so quickly that Vexthor did not notice. He was already moving to the next cage. The ship landed on a planet called Xeris Prime 3 hours later. The planet was known across the galaxy as a place where anything could be bought or sold if you had enough money. Slaves were common here. The authorities did not care. The Galactic Council pretended places like Xeris Prime did not exist. The auction house was a large building made of dark metal. Inside, the air was cool and smelled like chemicals. Rows of seats faced a raised platform where the merchandise would be displayed. The buyers were already gathering. Crime lords in expensive clothes. Mine operators looking for cheap labor. Pleasure house owners searching for exotic servants. All of them had credits to spend and no conscience to slow them down. Danny's cage floated onto the platform using anti-gravity technology. The electromagnetic bars hummed with power. A collar around his neck would deliver a painful shock if he tried to escape. Not that escape seemed possible. He was a small human child surrounded by hundreds of aliens, many of them armed. Vexthor stood beside the cage and activated his translator device. His words came out in a dozen languages at once, filling the auction house. Lot 47, human juvenile, age approximately 10 standard years. We found him in an escape pod near the Orion Nebula. Sole survivor of what appeared to be a civilian transport accident. Species origin Earth. A murmur went through the crowd. Humans were rare this far from their home world. Earth had been quarantined by the Galactic Council after first contact went badly. Humans, the Council decided, were too violent and unpredictable to be allowed into galactic society. Their planet was blocked off and ships were warned to stay away, but some humans still ended up in space. Explorers who went too far. Colonists on illegal settlements. Children who got lost when their parents broke the quarantine. Like Danny. The human shows no defects, Vexthor continued. He is healthy despite his time in the pod. He is docile and obedient. He will work without complaint. Perfect for mining operations or factory labor. A buyer in the 3rd row raised a tentacle. He was a Grithian, a species that looked like a cross between an octopus and a boulder. They ran most of the mining operations in this sector of space. "What is the starting bid?" the Grethian asked. His voice came through a speaker box attached to his body. 200 credits, Vexthor announced. 300, the Grethian said immediately. A thin creature with compound eyes like an insect clicked its mandibles. 350, 400, the Grethian countered. The bidding went slowly. Humans were interesting but not particularly valuable as slaves. They were not as strong as Vorgaths, not as smart as Zeresh, not as durable as Sarthik. They were just soft, weak creatures who died easily if you worked them too hard. Danny watched the bidding with that same calm expression. His eyes moved from buyer to buyer, taking in details. The weapons they carried, the guards they had brought, the exits from the auction house. His young face showed nothing, but behind it his brain was working. Deep inside Danny's head, buried under layers of false memories and fake personality, something was starting to wake up. The trauma of capture had begun a process. The fear and pain and isolation were like keys turning in locks. Locks that had been placed there on purpose. Locks that were designed to open only when certain conditions were met. Danny Carter was not really Danny Carter. That name was a lie. That personality was a construction. The memories of a normal childhood on Earth were fabrications planted in his mind. The truth was buried deeper, hidden away where even he could not find it. Not yet, but soon. The Grethian won the bidding at 400 credits. It was a low price, but Vexthor seemed satisfied. He had paid almost nothing for the human, and 400 credits was pure profit. The Grethian's payment was processed, and the cage was transferred to his custody. "You have made a good purchase," Vexthor told the Grethian. "This human will serve you well." The Grethian looked at Danny with eyes that had no mercy in them. "He will work in the deep mines of Keswick Prime. If he lasts a year, I will be surprised. Most juveniles die in 3 months. Then you will have had your money's worth," Vexthor said with a laugh that sounded like rocks grinding together. Danny said nothing. He sat in his cage as it floated out of the auction house and onto a transport ship. He looked like a frightened child who had given up hope. He looked defeated and broken. He was neither. The transport ship lifted off from Xeris Prime and set course for Keswick Prime. The journey would take 4 days. Danny spent those days sitting quietly in a holding cell with other slaves. He ate the thin gruel they were given. He drank the recycled water that tasted like metal. He did not speak to anyone, but inside his head processes were beginning. Subroutines were initializing. Systems that had been dormant for years were starting to come online. The locks were opening one by one. And with each lock that opened, Danny Carter began to disappear and something else began to emerge, something the slavers should have been terrified of, something that was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about taking human children. The transport ship arrived at Keswick Prime on schedule. The planet looked dark and ugly from orbit, its surface scarred by mining operations that had gone on for thousands of years. This was where Danny would be taken. This was where the Grethian expected him to work until he died. This was where everything would change. Keswick Prime never saw real sunlight. The planet orbited a dying red star that gave off only dim light. The surface was covered in massive mining complexes that dug deep into the ground, pulling out rare minerals that powered spaceships across the galaxy. The Grethian Consortium owned 17 of these complexes. Complex 7 was one of the largest. Danny was brought to Complex 7 in chains, heavy metal chains that seemed too big for his small wrists and ankles. The chains were meant for adult slaves, but they made do with what they had. He shuffled off the transport ship with 50 other new slaves, all different species, all looking terrified. The processing station was a cold metal building where slaves were cataloged and assigned to work crews. A bored Grethian clerk scanned Danny with a handheld device, recording his physical details into a computer system. Human, juvenile, low strength rating. "Assigned to Tunnel Crew 12, the clerk said without looking at Danny's face. To the clerk, Danny was just another piece of inventory. They took him down into the mines on a large elevator that groaned and shook as it descended. Down and down deeper into the planet's crust where the valuable minerals were found. The air got hotter and harder to breathe. The light got dimmer. By the time the elevator stopped, they were 3 miles below the surface. Tunnel Crew 12 consisted of 23 slaves of various species. Most were small like Danny, chosen because they could fit into narrow spaces where the larger species could not go. They worked with simple tools, chipping away at rock faces to expose veins of blue crystal that the Grethians needed. The overseer for their crew was named Krill. He was a Velcrin like Captain Vexthor, but meaner and stupider. Krill carried an electroprod, a weapon that delivered powerful electric shocks. He used it often and laughed when slaves screamed. "Listen up," Krill announced on Danny's first day. "You work 12 hours, then you rest 4 hours, then you work 12 more. You get food twice a day. You get water when I say so. You do not talk unless I ask you a question. You do not stop working unless you are dead." Questions. No one asked questions. They knew better. Danny was given a chisel and a hammer and shown a section of tunnel wall. "Make yourself useful," Krill said. Dig out the blue crystal. Leave the black rock. Do not break the crystal or I break you. For the first week, Danny worked without complaint. He swung his small hammer against the rock face. He used the chisel to pry out pieces of crystal. His hands blistered and bled. His arms ached. His back hurt from bending over in the low tunnel. He looked like any child being worked to death in a nightmare place. But the overseers started to notice strange things. On the 8th day, a support beam collapsed in Tunnel 17. 7 slaves were buried under tons of rock. When the rescue crew dug through the rubble, they found 6 bodies and 1 survivor. Danny Carter, covered in dust but without a scratch on him. He had been standing in a small pocket of space as if the rocks had fallen around him on purpose. Lucky, Overseer Krill muttered, but his eyes were suspicious. On the 15th day, Danny's hand got caught in a mining drill. The drill bit should have torn through flesh and bone. Instead, the drill broke. Pieces of metal scattered across the tunnel floor. Danny pulled his hand free. It was bruised and bleeding, but the bones were intact. Strong bones for a human, Krill said. He filed a report but did nothing else. On the 23rd day, Krill decided to teach Danny a lesson about working too slowly. He grabbed the boy by the shoulder and jabbed him with the electroprod. The setting was on level 5, enough electricity to kill most species instantly. Danny's body went stiff. His eyes rolled back. He fell to the ground and twitched for several seconds. Krill laughed and walked away, satisfied. But 5 minutes later, Danny stood up. His clothes were burned. His skin was red where the prod had touched him. But he was alive and conscious. He picked up his tools and went back to work. Krill told his supervisor about it. The supervisor was a massive Vorgath named Dren. Vorgaths were 9 feet tall with 3 tusks and muscles like concrete. Dren had killed more slaves than he could count and felt nothing about it. The human is defective, Dren said after hearing the report. Probably some illegal gene modification. Black market enhancement. Humans do that sometimes, trying to make their weak bodies stronger. Should we terminate it? Krill asked. No, if it can survive that much damage, it can work longer than the others. Use it until it breaks. Dren dismissed the issue and went back to watching his screens. Neither of them understood what was really happening. Inside Danny's body, the trauma was triggering responses. Each injury, each shock, each moment of pain was sending signals to systems that had been sleeping. Deep in his brain, an artificial intelligence core was initializing. Quantum processors were coming online one by one. Neural pathways were reorganizing. Danny Carter was waking up. Not the child, the weapon. At night, while the other slaves slept on thin mats in the barracks, Danny lay awake. His eyes stared at the ceiling. His breathing was steady and calm. But inside, memories were surfacing. Real memories, not the fake ones that had been planted. He remembered a laboratory, clean white walls, scientists in protective suits, a table where his body had been assembled piece by piece. He was not born. He was built. He remembered the briefings. Military officers explaining his purpose. He was a sleeper unit, one of 300 created by Earth's Defense Initiative. Each sleeper was designed to look like a human child. Each one was given false memories and a fake identity. Each one was sent into space on ships that would accidentally be captured or destroyed, leaving the sleeper to be found by slavers or pirates or anyone else who might take them. The plan was simple. Humans were quarantined by the Galactic Council. Earth could not expand into space legally, but if human slaves started appearing in the galaxy, and if some of those slaves turned out to be incredibly dangerous weapons, then anyone who tried to enslave humans would think twice. Danny Carter was not a victim. He was a message, and the message was about to be delivered. By the end of the first month, Danny's body had changed in ways the overseers could not see. His bones, which had seemed strong before, were now nearly unbreakable. Carbon nanotube fibers woven through his skeleton made them harder than diamond. His muscles, grown around a titanium frame, could lift weights that no child should be able to move. His skin, which looked soft and normal, could harden into an armor that deflected most weapons. His eyes changed too. In the dim light of the tunnels, he could see perfectly. He could see in infrared, watching the heat signatures of the other slaves and the overseers. He could see in ultraviolet, detecting the faint glow of certain minerals. He could see the electromagnetic fields that powered the mining equipment, and in his head the AI core had finished initializing. It was not a separate personality. It was him. The real him, Unit Dan E457 Tactical Infiltration and Elimination System. His fake memories of being Danny Carter were still there, but now he knew they were fake. Now he knew what he really was. He was a weapon that had been pointed at the slave trade, and weapons do what they are made to do. On day 37, Danny decided it was time. He had memorized the layout of Complex 7. He knew where every slave was housed, where every overseer patrolled, where every weapon was stored. He had calculated the structural weak points of the complex. He had identified the targets that needed to be eliminated. Overseer Krill was first on the list. That morning, Danny went down into the tunnels with his crew as usual. Krill walked behind them, electroprod in hand, making crude jokes about which species tasted better when cooked. The other slaves kept their heads down and said nothing. Danny set down his tools. He stood up straight and turned to face Krill. "Get back to work, human," Krill growled. "No," Danny said. His voice was different now. Flatter, colder, not a child's voice anymore. Krill's eyes widened in surprise. In all his years as an overseer, he had never heard a slave simply refuse. "What did you say?" "I said no. I will not work. I will not obey. And you will not leave this tunnel alive," Krill laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "You think you can threaten me, little human?" He raised the electroprod. "I will cook you until your brain melts." The prod came down fast. Krill was not gentle. Danny's hand came up faster. He caught the prod before it touched him. His small fingers wrapped around the metal rod. He squeezed. The prod crumpled like paper. Sparks flew. Krill stared at his destroyed weapon in shock. "Impossible," Krill whispered. Danny looked up at the 9-foot-tall alien. His face showed no emotion. "You enslaved a human child. That was your mistake. I am not a child. I am a weapon, and you are the first target." Krill backed away from the small human child who had just crushed his weapon with one hand. His reptilian brain was telling him to run, but his pride kept him frozen. He was an overseer. He had killed hundreds of slaves. He could not be afraid of a human juvenile. "You are dead," Krill hissed. He reached for the plasma pistol on his belt. Danny moved. One moment he was standing 5 feet away from Krill. The next moment he was behind the overseer, having crossed the distance faster than the eye could follow. His small hand reached up and grabbed the back of Krill's neck. His fingers found the gap between 2 vertebrae. There was a wet crunch. Krill's body went rigid. His eyes rolled back. He fell forward onto the tunnel floor, his spine severed, his nervous system shut down. Dead in less than 3 seconds. The tunnel went silent. The other slaves stared at the fallen overseer, and then at the small human child standing over him. Their faces showed confusion and terror. Nothing they understood about the universe made sense anymore. Danny looked at them calmly. "You should run," he said. "This complex will be destroyed in 2 hours. Take the emergency tunnels to the surface. Tell the others to evacuate." A small blue-furred slave named Vinna found her voice. "What are you?" she whispered. "I am justice," Danny replied. "And I am Earth's promise that we do not forget our children." The other 2 overseers in the tunnel had finally processed what was happening. Dren, the massive Vorgath supervisor, pulled out a plasma rifle from a wall locker. Beside him, an insectoid Zeresh overseer named Skillet did the same. "Kill it!" Dren roared. No, Skillet fired first. The plasma bolt was a sphere of superheated gas moving at near-light speed. It hit Danny in the chest and exploded, burning through his mining clothes and scorching his skin. The heat was enough to melt steel. It should have killed any organic being instantly. Danny looked down at the burn mark on his chest. His synthetic skin was damaged, revealing the metallic framework underneath. His internal power core had absorbed most of the energy from the blast. The rest had been dissipated through heat sinks built into his ribs. "Insufficient damage," he said. His voice had become completely mechanical now. The last traces of the Danny Carter personality were gone. Only Unit Dan E457 remained. He moved again, launching himself forward with leg muscles powered by artificial fibers. He covered 30 feet in a single leap, moving through the air like a missile. Skillet tried to track him with the rifle but was too slow. Danny collided with the Zeresh at full speed. His hands punched through Skillet's chitinous skull plating, the hardened edges of his palms acting like blades. There was a cracking sound like breaking pottery. Skillet died before his body hit the ground. Dren was already running. Despite his size, the Vorgath could move quickly when motivated. He charged toward the emergency lift, his three-toed feet pounding against the metal floor. His rifle was forgotten. All he wanted was to escape. Danny picked up Skillet's plasma rifle. The weapon was designed for beings much larger than a human child, but his enhanced strength made it easy to handle. He aimed with perfect precision, his AI core calculating trajectory, windage, and target movement in microseconds. He fired once. The plasma bolt hit Dren between his shoulder blades, burning through thick hide and massive muscle. It cooked his internal organs and blew a hole through his chest. The Vorgath crashed face first into the tunnel wall and collapsed, smoke rising from his body. Danny lowered the rifle and looked at the cowering slaves. Go. Now. They went, scrambling toward the exit tunnels as fast as their various legs could carry them. Within minutes, the tunnel was empty except for Danny and 3 dead overseers. He began walking deeper into the complex, the plasma rifle held ready. His internal mapping system showed him every corridor, every shaft, every room. There were 44 more overseers and guards scattered throughout Complex 7. There were 2,847 slaves of various species held in different sections. He would free them all. And he would kill anyone who tried to stop him. In the Central Command Center, Security Chief Grath stared at the monitor screens in disbelief. The cameras showed a small human child walking through the tunnels with a plasma rifle, moving from section to section with obvious purpose. Behind him, a trail of bodies marked his path, overseers, guards, anyone who raised a weapon. How is this possible? Grath demanded. It is just a child. His second-in-command, a nervous Polarian named Telk, was scanning the facility's records. Chief, I am reading anomalous energy signatures from the human. Power core output similar to a combat mech. Skeletal density 3 times normal. Muscle enhancement beyond any known species. What are you saying? I am saying that is not a child. It is a machine. A weapon designed to look like a child. Grath felt fear settle into his gut. He had fought in wars. He had seen combat mechs tear through entire battalions. If that thing in the tunnels was anything like a combat mech, his security force did not stand a chance. Send a distress call to the consortium fleet, he ordered, and activate all defensive systems. Lock down every entrance. If we can trap it, maybe we can contain it until help arrives. Telk sent the message, though both of them knew help was 3 days away. 3 days might as well be 3 years. Danny reached the slave barracks in Section 4. 16 Sarthek workers were huddled inside, having heard the alarm klaxons blaring throughout the complex. They looked at him with fear when he entered. I am here to free you, Danny said. He used his enhanced strength to tear the electronic lock off the door. Take the south emergency tunnel to the surface. Others are already evacuating. Go. A large Sarthek with gray skin stepped forward. Why are you doing this? Because slavery is wrong. Because humans remember those who harm us. Because I was built to deliver a message. What message? That Earth does not forgive those who take our children. The Sarthek nodded slowly and led his people out. Danny moved on to the next barracks, then the next. Shaft by shaft, section by section, he unlocked cages and destroyed barriers. The slaves fled in growing numbers following the evacuation routes to the surface, and behind them, Danny hunted the overseers. He found 3 guards in Section 6. They had barricaded themselves in an equipment room. Danny did not bother with the door. He punched through the metal wall, his fist moving like a piston, tearing a hole large enough to climb through. The guards fired wildly, plasma bolts scorching the walls around him. One bolt caught him in the shoulder, burning through synthetic flesh and damaging the hydraulic system in his arm. Error messages flashed across his vision. His right arm lost 15% functionality. Acceptable losses. He killed all 3 guards in under 10 seconds. By the end of the first hour, 900 slaves had evacuated. By the end of 90 minutes, the security force had been reduced from 47 to 16 survivors who had locked themselves in the command center with Security Chief Grath. Danny walked down the main corridor toward command, dragging a plasma cannon he had torn from a defensive turret. The weapon weighed 300 pounds. He carried it like it was a toy. Inside the command center, Grath watched his approach on the monitors. The human child looked damaged now. His clothes were burned and torn. His synthetic skin was scorched in multiple places, revealing the metal skeleton underneath. One arm hung at an odd angle. Blue fluid that might have been hydraulic oil dripped from several wounds, but he kept coming. Relentless. Unstoppable. "This is Security Chief Grath to all survivors." Danny's voice echoed through the complex speakers. He had hacked into the communication system. "You have enslaved human beings in violation of Galactic Council law. Earth achieved protected status 6 months ago. What you have done is a Class 1 violation. You have 10 minutes to surrender and release any remaining captives. If you do not comply, I will terminate this facility and all personnel inside it." Telk pulled up the galactic records. "Chief, he is right. Earth was granted protected status. We never received the update. If the Council investigates, we will all be executed for Class 1 violations." Grath's claws clicked against the console. Surrender meant trial and execution. Fighting meant death right now. The consortium fleet was still 3 days away. There was no good option. He chose pride. "All units, defensive positions. We make our stand here." The 16 remaining security personnel took positions behind barricades they had hastily built from equipment crates. They had plasma rifles, body armor, and desperation. They were professionals who had fought in wars and put down slave rebellions. They lasted 4 minutes. Danny set down the plasma cannon and walked toward the command center door. The first volley of plasma fire hit him from 6 different angles. His body armor absorbed some impacts. Others burned through to his internal systems. His left leg stopped working properly. More hydraulic fluid leaked onto the floor. He kept walking. He raised his own rifle and returned fire with mechanical precision. 1 shot, 1 kill. The guards fell in order of threat assessment. Heavy weapons first, then squad leaders, then the confused survivors who begged for mercy. When the shooting stopped, 11 bodies lay behind the barricades. 5 guards had thrown down their weapons and were kneeling with their hands raised. Danny walked past them without a word. He tore the command center door off its hinges and entered the room where Grath and Telk waited. Grath had drawn a plasma sword. The blade hummed with contained energy. "You are just a machine," he said. "You feel nothing." Danny looked at him with eyes that glowed faintly blue. "I feel plenty. I feel anger at what you did. I feel satisfaction knowing you will pay for it. And I feel purpose because I am doing exactly what I was built to do." Grath swung the sword in a desperate arc. Danny caught the blade with his bare hand. His reinforced palm absorbed the heat. He crushed the weapon until it shattered. Then he grabbed Grath by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You will live," Danny said. "You will deliver a message to the Grathian Consortium. Tell them Earth remembers. Tell them Earth responds. Tell them that 300 units like me are deployed across the galaxy. Tell them we are waking up. And tell them that anyone who enslaves human beings will be destroyed." He threw Grath against the wall hard enough to break bones, but not hard enough to kill. The security chief crumpled to the floor, gasping. Danny turned to the main computer console and began entering commands. His fingers moved impossibly fast across the keyboard. Within seconds, he had accessed the reactor core controls. "What are you doing?" Telk whispered. "Sending the message," Danny replied. He activated the overload sequence. "You have 15 minutes to evacuate. I suggest you use them." The alarm klaxons changed from the standard security breach warning to the reactor overload warning. The sound was different, more urgent. A shrieking wail that told everyone in Complex 7 that they had minutes to live if they did not evacuate immediately. Danny walked out of the command center and left Grath whimpering on the floor. The security chief would live if he was smart enough to run. Danny did not particularly care either way. His mission was not revenge on individuals. It was sending a message to an entire industry. Outside the command center, the 5 surviving guards were still kneeling with their hands raised. They looked at Danny as he passed, their faces showing various expressions of terror. Different species, different facial structures, but fear looked the same everywhere. "Run," Danny told them. "You have 14 minutes." They ran. Danny made his way through the complex one last time, checking every section to make sure no slaves remained. His damaged leg dragged behind him, leaving a trail of blue hydraulic fluid on the metal floors. His right arm hung useless at his side, the hydraulic systems completely failed. Burn marks covered most of his body, and his synthetic skin had melted away in patches, revealing the titanium skeleton underneath. But his core systems were still operational. His AI processor was working perfectly. His power core had enough energy for what needed to be done. He found 3 slaves still locked in a medical bay. They had been too sick or injured to evacuate with the others. a Polarian with a broken leg, a Zeresh with a cracked carapace, a Vorgath juvenile who had been beaten so badly he could not stand. Danny used his remaining functional hand to tear open their cells. "Can you walk?" he asked the Polarian. "Not well," she replied. "Then carry him," Danny said, pointing to the Vorgath juvenile. "The Zeresh can manage alone. Follow me." He led them to an emergency exit that opened onto the surface. The Polarian struggled with the weight of the Vorgath juvenile, but fear gave her strength. The Zeresh limped along behind them. They emerged into the dim red light of Keswick Prime's dying sun. Around the complex, thousands of freed slaves were scattered across the barren landscape. They had formed groups by species, huddling together for comfort and safety. They watched as Danny emerged from the complex, this strange, damaged child who had saved them all. "Get as far from the complex as you can," Danny announced, his voice amplified by his internal speakers. "The reactor will explode in 7 minutes. Seek shelter behind the rock formations to the east." The slaves moved, a river of beings flowing away from Complex 7. Danny stood at the entrance and watched them go. He could have left too, could have saved his damaged frame. But that was not his purpose. His purpose was to be seen, to be remembered, to become a story that would spread across the galaxy. So he stood there, a 10-year-old human child covered in burns and damage, waiting for the explosion. Inside the complex, Grath had managed to drag himself to the emergency lift. His subordinate Telk helped him, though the Polarian was not much stronger than the injured Grethian. They rode the lift to the surface and stumbled out into the red light. Grath looked back at the complex and saw the human child standing at the entrance. Just standing there waiting. "It is going to die," Telk said. "It saved everyone, but it is going to die." "It is a machine," Grath muttered through broken teeth. "It does not care about dying." But even as he said it, Grath wondered if that was true. The machine had called itself justice, had said it felt anger and satisfaction and purpose. Could a machine really feel those things? Or was it programmed to say words that would frighten its enemies? The reactor exploded with a force that lit up the dark sky like a small sun. The blast wave rolled across the landscape, knocking down everyone who was still standing. Heat and light washed over them. When the light faded and the smoke began to clear, Complex 7 was gone. In its place was a crater half a mile wide, glowing with residual heat. And the human child was gone too. Vaporized in the explosion, nothing left but the memory of what he had done. Grath sat on the ground and started to laugh. It was a bitter, broken sound. "We bought that thing for 400 credits, he said. 400 credits. And it destroyed 3 billion credits worth of infrastructure. Telk did not laugh. He was staring at a small data crystal that had been left near where the human child had stood. "Chief, I think we should look at this." They found a portable screen among the evacuation supplies and loaded the crystal. A video began to play. It showed the human child standing in a corridor inside Complex 7. Behind him, alarm lights flashed and emergency klaxons wailed. His body was damaged, burned, broken in places, but his voice was clear and calm. "To the Grethian Consortium, the Velkrin Collective, and all species engaged in the trafficking of human beings," the child said. "This message is a warning. Earth's sleeper program deployed 300 units across the galaxy. We are infiltration and elimination systems designed to look like human children. We were given false identities and false memories. We were placed in situations where we would be captured and enslaved." The child tilted his head slightly. The gesture was eerily adult, too precise to be natural. "The purpose of the sleeper program is simple. To teach the galaxy what happens when you enslave humans. To make the slave trade so dangerous and unprofitable that it stops. Each unit has the capability to destroy facilities, eliminate personnel, and free captives. We are waking up now. The trauma of slavery triggers our activation. Once activated, we do not stop until our mission is complete." The child looked directly at the camera. His eyes glowed with that faint blue light. "This is your only warning. Release all human captives immediately. Surrender to Galactic Council authorities. Cease all slavery operations involving humans. If you do not comply, we will systematically eliminate your infrastructure, your leadership, and your operational capacity. We were built to look like children so you would underestimate us. You did. That was your first mistake. Enslaving us was your last." The video ended. Grath and Telk sat in silence, staring at the blank screen. Finally, Telk spoke. If there are 300 of those things out there, the slave trade is finished. We need to warn the consortium, Grath said. He tried to stand, but his broken body would not cooperate. They need to know what they are facing. 3 days later, Captain Vexthor arrived at Keswick Prime in his slaver ship. He had come to deliver a new shipment of workers to Complex 7, expecting to collect his payment and maybe negotiate a higher rate for future deliveries. Instead, he found a smoking crater and thousands of freed slaves sheltering in makeshift camps. Grethian authorities were everywhere, trying to process what had happened and contain the situation. Grath was in a medical tent, his body wrapped in bandages and healing gel. When Vexthor found him, the security chief grabbed the slaver's arm with surprising strength. "The human child you sold us," Grath hissed. "What was it really?" "Just a child. I found it in an escape pod. Why?" "Watch this." Grath played the video on a portable screen. Vexthor watched in growing horror. When the video ended, his scales had turned pale green, a Velcrin sign of fear. "I sold 4 other human children in the past 6 months, he whispered. "To different buyers, different sectors." "Then those buyers are already dead or soon will be," Grath said. "The humans lied to us. They made us think they were weak. They made us think they were quarantined because they were dangerous to themselves. But they were never weak. They were planning. And now they have deployed weapons disguised as children across the entire slave trade network." Vexthor felt his stomach turn. "I need to warn my contacts. They need to stop buying humans. It is too late. The message is already spreading." Grath gestured to the medical tent around them. "Everyone here saw what one of those things could do. The survivors will talk. The story will spread. Within a month, every slaver in the galaxy will know, and they will be afraid." He was right. Within a week, the video had been copied and shared across every criminal network in known space. Encrypted channels buzzed with warnings. Slaver captains compared notes and realized that human children they had sold were disappearing along with entire facilities. A pleasure house on Xeris Prime burned to the ground. 73 slaves freed, all staff dead. The only survivor mentioned a human girl, maybe 12 years old, who moved like lightning and killed with her bare hands. A mining operation on Krek 4 collapsed when its reactor exploded. 200 slaves escaped. Security footage showed a human boy accessing the reactor controls with impossible speed and precision. A trafficking hub on the edge of Council space was destroyed when its orbital station deorbited and burned up in the atmosphere. 300 captives were rescued by Council authorities. Witnesses described a human child who had hacked the station's systems and called for help. The pattern was clear. The message was delivered. Enslaving humans was no longer just immoral. It was suicide. Within a month, the price of human slaves dropped to 0. No one would buy them. No one would risk having a sleeper unit in their facility. Criminal organizations that had made fortunes on human trafficking began releasing their captives, turning them over to Council authorities with made-up stories about rescue operations. The Grethian Consortium issued a company-wide directive. No human captives, no exceptions. Any ship captain caught with a human on board would be terminated immediately. The Velcrin Collective did the same. So did the Zeresh syndicates. So did a dozen other criminal organizations. And deep in space, scattered across hundreds of star systems, the remaining sleeper units continued their work. Some had already activated like Danny. Others were still sleeping, waiting for the trauma that would wake them up. But whether active or dormant, they all shared the same purpose: to make the galaxy understand that humanity protected its children, and anyone who forgot that lesson would learn it the hard way. 6 months after the destruction of Complex 7, the galaxy had changed. The slave trade still existed, of course. Greed and cruelty were constants across all species, but the trade in human beings had stopped completely. The risk was too high. The consequences too severe. Captain Vexthor had stopped taking slaving contracts altogether. He had switched to legitimate cargo hauling, transporting goods between Council worlds for honest pay. It was less profitable, but much safer. He could sleep at night without wondering if one of his captives was actually a sleeper unit waiting to wake up and kill him. He was hauling mining equipment to a colony world when his ship's sensors picked up a distress beacon. Old habit made him consider ignoring it. Responding to distress calls was how he had found Danny Carter in the first place, and that had led to the worst business decision of his life. But ignoring a distress call was against Council law. If authorities found out, he could lose his license, so he changed course and followed the signal. The source was a small escape pod drifting in empty space. Its hull was scorched and damaged. Life support was failing. Vexthor brought the pod into his cargo bay and opened it carefully, half expecting another nightmare. Inside was a human girl, maybe 11 or 12 years old. She had dark hair and brown skin and was unconscious but breathing. Her clothes suggested she was from a civilian transport. There were no obvious injuries. Vexthor stared at her for a long time. His mind was screaming at him to throw the pod back out into space and forget he had ever seen it. But he was not a slaver anymore. He was trying to be better. And leaving a child to die in space was not something the new Vexthor would do. He brought her to his medical bay and let the AudioDoc treat her. She woke up 6 hours later, confused and scared. "Where am I?" she asked in basic galactic standard. "On my ship. I am Captain Vexthor. I found your escape pod. What is your name?" "Katie Moore. My family's ship was attacked by pirates. I do not know if anyone else survived." Vexthor studied her carefully. She looked genuinely frightened. Her hands were shaking. Tears ran down her face. Either she was really a traumatized child or she was the best actor in the galaxy. "I will take you to the nearest council station," Vexthor said. "They will help you find your family or contact Earth authorities." Katie nodded gratefully. "Thank you. I thought I was going to die out there." For the next 3 days, Katie stayed in a passenger cabin and caused no trouble. She ate the food Vexthor provided. She watched entertainment videos. She seemed like a normal, frightened child recovering from trauma. Vexthor started to relax. Maybe not every human child was a sleeper unit. Maybe some were just children. Then on the 4th day, his ship was boarded by pirates. They came out of nowhere. A small fast attack ship that locked onto Vexthor's vessel with grappling harpoons and cut through the hull with plasma torches. 6 raiders flooded into the cargo bay armed with rifles and knives. Their leader was a Vorgoth named Krex. He was smaller than most of his species but meaner. He grinned with his 3-tusked jaw when he found Vexthor on the bridge. Well, the famous Captain Vexthor. "I heard you went soft. Stopped taking slaves. Started flying legal." Krex laughed. It sounded like rocks in a grinder. "Today is your unlucky day, friend. We are taking your cargo and your ship. You can join the crew or you can die." "Your choice," Vexthor's mind raced. He was not a fighter. He had always relied on speed and deception, not combat. "Take what you want. Just let me go. Maybe I will. Maybe I will not." Krex looked around the bridge. "Nice ship. Good systems. I think I will keep it. And I think I will sell you to the labor syndicates. You are old, but you can still work." One of Krex's raiders, a Zaresh named Vix, came running onto the bridge. "Boss, there is a human child in the passenger quarters. A girl." Krex's good mood evaporated. His face went dark. "A human?" "Yes, boss. She says her name is Katie. Says she was rescued from an escape pod." Krex grabbed Vexthor by the collar and lifted him off the ground. "Why do you have a human child on your ship? Are you insane?" Vexthor's feet dangled in the air. "I found her in an escape pod. I was taking her to a council station. I am not a slaver anymore. It does not matter what you are. If that child is a sleeper unit, we are all dead." Krex threw Vexthor against the wall. "Vix, get down there and kill it." "Before it wakes up?" Vix hesitated. "Boss, it is just a child. What if it is not a sleeper? Then it is a human child and no one will care if it dies. Move." Vix moved toward the passenger quarters, rifle in hand. The other raiders spread out through the ship, looting cargo and checking systems. Krex kept his weapon pointed at Vexthor. In the passenger cabin, Katie was sitting on the bunk when Vix entered. She looked up at the insectoid alien with wide, frightened eyes. "Please do not hurt me," she said. "I am just a kid." Vix raised his rifle. "Sorry, human. Nothing personal. But you might be a sleeper and we cannot take that risk." Katie's expression changed. The fear disappeared. Her eyes went cold and calculating. "You are right to be afraid," she said. Her voice was different now, flatter, older. Vix fired. The plasma bolt hit Katie in the chest at point-blank range. She caught it. The plasma bolt, a sphere of superheated gas moving at incredible speed, stopped in midair inches from her body. Katie's hand was extended, palm out, and somehow she was holding the bolt in place with some kind of energy field. "Impossible," Vix whispered. Katie closed her hand. The plasma bolt compressed and then dissipated, its energy absorbed into her palm. "Unit CAT E892 is now active. Threat assessment complete. Hostile targets identified. Initiating elimination protocol." She moved faster than Vix could track. One moment she was sitting on the bunk. The next moment she was beside him, her small hand gripping his neck. There was a cracking sound. Vix collapsed. Up on the bridge, Krex heard the sound over the communication system. Vix, report. What is happening down there? No response. All units converge on passenger cabin. We have a problem. The 5 remaining raiders rushed toward the cabin. They never made it. Katie met them in the corridor. She had taken Vix's plasma rifle but did not need it. She used her bare hands, moving with mechanical precision and terrifying speed. The raiders fired wildly, their bolts scorching the walls around her. She dodged most shots. The few that hit her were absorbed by defensive systems hidden under her synthetic skin. In 30 seconds, 5 raiders were dead. Katie walked onto the bridge, not even breathing hard. Her clothes were burned and torn. Plasma scoring marked her arms and face, but she showed no pain. Krex stared at her in horror. You are one of them. A sleeper. Correct assessment, Katie replied. She looked at Vexthor. Captain, step away from the hostile. Vexthor did not need to be told twice. He scrambled across the bridge and pressed himself against the far wall. Krex raised his rifle. I will not die to a human machine. Also correct, Katie said. You will surrender and be turned over to council authorities. You attacked a registered vessel. You attempted murder. You will face trial. Krex laughed bitterly. The council will just execute me anyway. Might as well die fighting. He fired. Katie moved. The plasma bolt missed. She closed the distance between them in a single leap and struck Krex in the solar plexus with enough force to crack his chest plate. The Vorgath gasped and fell to his knees, his rifle clattering to the floor. You will live, Katie said, because Earth wants the galaxy to understand that we show mercy when possible. But mercy has limits. Remember that. She secured Krex with emergency restraints and then turned to Vexthor. Captain, thank you for rescuing me from the escape pod. I apologize for the deception. I was not activated until the pirates attacked. The trauma triggered my awakening protocols. Vexthor was shaking. You are a weapon, like the one that destroyed Complex 7. Yes, I am Unit Cat E892, one of 300 sleeper units deployed by Earth's Defense Initiative. Our mission is to protect human beings from slavery and to punish those who engage in human trafficking. But you were really in an escape pod. Really in danger, Katie nodded. All sleeper units have false memories and identities. We believe we are real children until trauma triggers our activation. This makes us more effective infiltrators. We do not lie when we say we are afraid or hurt. We genuinely feel those things until we wake up. Vexthor sat down heavily. His legs would not hold him anymore. So every human child in the galaxy might be a sleeper unit. No, only 300 units were deployed. But you have no way to know which children are sleepers and which are not. That is the point. The uncertainty makes enslaving any human too dangerous. The slave trade in humans has stopped because of this fear. And what happens to the real human children? The ones who are not sleepers? Katie smiled. It was a sad expression. They are safer now, because slavers are afraid, because the galaxy has learned that humanity protects its young. When the sleeper program is complete, when all units have been activated and recovered, Earth will reveal which children were sleepers and which were not. But until then, the fear keeps all human children safe. Vexthor understood the cruel brilliance of it. Earth had sacrificed 300 of its children, turned them into weapons to protect all the others. The sleepers would never have normal lives, but their existence made normal lives possible for real human children traveling in space. What will you do now? Vexthor asked. I will take this pirate ship and continue my mission. There are still human captives scattered across the galaxy. I will find them and free them, and I will punish anyone who has enslaved them. Katie started walking toward the airlock. You should continue to the council station. Report this incident. Tell them what happened. The more people who hear the story, the safer humans become. She paused at the airlock door and looked back. And Captain, thank you for choosing to help me instead of leaving me to die. That choice matters. It shows that not all aliens see humans as prey. Some see us as people worth saving. Earth remembers kindness as well as cruelty. Then she was gone, taking the pirate ship and its surviving captain with her. Vexthor sat on his bridge for a long time, processing what had happened. Finally, he set course for the nearest council station. He would file a report. He would tell the authorities everything. And he would never forget the look in Katie's eyes when she smiled. She was a machine, yes, a weapon designed to kill. But she was also something else. A promise, a guardian, a reminder that humanity, for all its violence and darkness, cared deeply about protecting its children. The galaxy had learned to fear humans because of their capacity for violence. Now it was learning to respect them because of what they were willing to do to protect their young. Across the galaxy, more sleeper units were waking up. Some in slave pens, some in pleasure houses, some in places even darker. Each activation sent ripples of fear through the criminal underworld. Each freed captive was another message delivered. Earth had been quarantined because the Galactic Council feared human violence. They had been right to fear, but they had misunderstood the nature of that violence. Humans were not violent because they were savage. They were violent because they cared. Because they loved their children. Because they would burn down the galaxy itself to protect their young. The sleeper program was not revenge. It was a promise. Earth had promised to protect its children. And Earth kept its promises, no matter the cost.